Hey guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing a movie review. This is a horror film from France, French language English subs, released in the year 2002, directed by Marina Devan, and this movie is called In My Skin. And the story to In My Skin is as follows. In My Skin is a haunting and riveting exploration of the human body as a boundary and a battleground between the individual and the often unreachable outside world. After suffering deep gashes to her leg from an accident fall, Esther, a young research analyst, becomes occupied with her body and skin, especially with her wounds. At first she merely caresses her arms, pinches her excess skin, or traces the cuts on her legs. But it isn't long before she is carving wounds directly and aggressively into her own body. Her boyfriend becomes understandably concerned and angry, but his inability to understand forces Esther into reclusion to explore her newfound practice. So the main character is Esther. She is a beautiful young woman who has everything going for her. She's got a great job, home, and boyfriend. So all of that is about to take a turn for the worst when one evening she sustains a horrible injury to her leg, and therefore she has got these ghastly wounds. So she goes to hospital, she gets repaired, and starts her obsession with her body. She basically caresses her wounds, and then she starts to pick at them. And when she starts to bleed, she becomes even more fascinated with it, and this escalates to her basically self-mutilating. She takes a knife and she starts cutting her own skin very aggressively. So her boyfriend notices this. Her boyfriend is very worried about it, but he doesn't understand what's going on, so he starts to become frustrated, and this further causes Esther to go into a recluse sort of existence, and so that she can carry out her fascinations and practice by herself. So what happens from that point on, what's in store for Esther and the ones that love her, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on the film. This is a very important film, and I feel that films like this aren't made regularly enough. Now, mental illness, it's one of the most misunderstood things that you could possibly have. Now, personally, I'm a depressive. I'm a severe depressive. I've been on medication, and a lot of people just don't understand how I can't just snap out of it. And it kind of seems like an easy thing. From the outside perspective, looking in onto it, you can kind of feel to yourself, well, I would have snapped out of it. But, without really experiencing the mental illness and the debilitating control that mental illness can have over you, you never really understand. So when movies like this are made, I feel it gives you a clearer insight. While it's not really going to educate you to the point of being able to totally understand it, it's going to give you a little bit more of an insight than maybe you once had. So movies like this, I feel, are very important, although it is an extremely difficult film to watch. Now, as far as extreme value is concerned, I'm putting this right up there with Martyrs. Now, Martyrs hits you very, very hard, sledgehammer impact. These days, you can't grab the attention of a viewer by tapping them on the shoulder. You basically got to smack them over the head with a sledgehammer. And that's exactly what this film will do. It makes no apologies, and it's just very, very in your face. And this is exactly what a film of this nature needs to be. Sugarcoating it would not have done it justice. So Marina Devan throws it all in your face, and for that, I applaud her, but that's also the film's downbringing as well. Now, what I didn't like about the movie was the fact that it kind of feels like it's shock value for shock value. Yes, it does get its message across. It shows you how ghastly these things are. It's not basically turning a blind eye to it. It's not sugarcoating it. It's not downplaying it. So I like the aspect of the shock value. But where the shock value gets in the way is in the fact that the characters aren't as developed as they probably should have been. So it's a very simplistic sort of plot. It's basically a woman who sustains an injury, then goes to self-mutilation. So for a movie that's supposed to hit you on a psychological impact, I thought it was a little bit too visually done. Whereas the characters I thought were a little bit simplistic, they weren't very three-dimensional, and so you're sympathizing for Esther because of the fact because of the severity of her actions, and you kind of feel that yes, this is a very scary thing. Her mind has taken control completely, and there's one scene in particular around a dinner table that I thought was superb, and it really captured the feeling that even depressives, have in what was, a lack of control, feeling like you're not in control, even though it is your body, that something inside you has taken you taking you captive, and you can't really express yourself and you can't get out there. So that's how scary mental illness can be. And I feel that on some regards, the psychological impact was good, but it was nowhere near as good as it should have been. So it kind of feels like the visuals take over. It shocks you. It makes you open your eyes, but after the shocking value, there are a number of scenes that are going to burn into your memory forever. But when you look underneath that, it kind of lacks a little bit. The characters, the development is not there. Now, The most interesting character for me, apart from Esther, was her boyfriend, and that's where the movie really should have kicked into overdrive with the impact of ignorance. Now, Loren Lucas played the role of the boyfriend brilliantly, as does Marina Devan, who also directed it, plays the lead role of Esther. Very likable characters, but as I said, very simplistic. And the only reason you feel sorry for Esther is because of the severity of her actions and what she's actually doing to herself. You don't want to see that happen, but whereas it should have been more about wanting to see her get over this illness because you really like the person, but you just don't know enough about Esther to really care that much. So it's going to strike you by a horrifying element, and that's going to gain the sympathy instead of really understanding this specific character. So there's a lot of cloudy element to the film. The progression from healthy to unhealthy mind, I thought was too quick. It kind of felt like there was a little bit in the middle missing, where it kind of shows that she flips overnight. It's kind of like the movie American Mary, where I thought when she turns from victim to avenger, I thought it was way too quick, and it kind of lacks a little bit. So you don't really get an insight. It doesn't really feel as realistic as it probably should be. So that's the same problem I had with this film. It kind of felt like something was missing, and it was a little bit too quick from one stage to the other. Now, I know that some films choose to do that deliberately, and I can appreciate that. There is implications to the fact that she couldn't handle society. She was, feeling the stresses of her job, but I felt that those implications were too subtle. And for a movie like this, I think it would have been better to have more of a simplistic approach in that she suffers a traumatic event. Now, yes, this traumatic event where she's cut her leg, that's always going to, it's painful. But I felt that a more traumatic sort of experience in her, like for me, when I had depression, that was a result of me having cancer. So it was something that was life-changing. Whereas in this movie, it's not really life-changing. And yes, there are cases of people going from healthy to unhealthy sort of mindsets overnight, and basically for no real reason. But for this movie to provide something of more use, I thought it would have been a lot better to have a more simplistic approach, have less implication and more, set in stone quality, as in maybe she's lost a loved one, or she got fired from her job, or something bad happened apart from just hurting a leg. Because then that way it gives you more of an insight into how mental illness works, as opposed to just seeing someone flip out overnight, therefore thinking that this is something that you choose rather than you have thrust upon you, if that makes sense. So Loren Lucas's character, I thought he symbolized ignorance. He symbolized the problem that mentally ill people have, where they don't understand and they're trying to help, but in trying to help, they're basically making the situation worse. That they're starting to get frustrated and they're starting to lash out at these people, therefore basically pushing them off to the side even more and making the mentally ill people feel like more of a leper rather than someone who fits in, so it kind of makes them worse. So I really like that aspect to it. As I said, it is a film that really has its place. It is extreme, a very, very extreme. It's right up there with Martyrs as far as provocative material is concerned. Some very graphic depictions of self-mutilation. Apparently a few people have fainted while watching this film, so I would definitely say only applies to the more seasoned sort of hardened horror fan. If you're a fan of Cronenberg sort of body horror, this is definitely one for you. If you want more of an insight into mental illness and the control that the mind can have, I think that this is a very important film to watch. As I said, there are a few negatives that prevent it from being a masterpiece, but I feel that this film is better than Cutting Moments. I thought Cutting Moments was a shorter film, but it was really a movie made just for shock value as far as I'm concerned. Whereas this one, yes, it is shocking, but it has a little bit more insight into it, although probably not as much insight as it should have. So overall, not a bad film, a very, very extreme film, so be very careful. But overall, giving it 3.5 stars, it does have its place, but unfortunately I felt it's a little bit underdone. So you look underneath the shocking element and it's a little bit bare bones. So 3.5 stars for the French horror film In My Skin. Definitely go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.